My wife tried to sneak out at 3 a.m. with suitcases and a dramatic exit, but I handed her the keys, changed the locks, and built a better life. Drawers slamming shut woke me. There I was, pulled from sleep by what sounded like someone ransacking my own bedroom. I rolled over and saw her, my wife of 8 years, stuffing clothes into 2 large suitcases, with the kind of urgency you'd expect from someone fleeing a crime scene. She hadn't noticed I was awake yet. Her movements were sharp, almost violent, as she grabbed items from our shared dresser and tossed them carelessly into the bags. The bathroom light was on, casting harsh shadows across the room, and I could see she'd already cleared out her side of the medicine cabinet. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. She froze mid-motion, a handful of her underwear clutched in her fist. When she turned to face me, her expression was a mixture of guilt and defiance, like a teenager caught sneaking out. "I didn't want to wake you," she said, but there was no apology in her tone. "Little late for that consideration, don't you think?" I sat up in bed, crossing my arms. "So, what's the plan here? Midnight escape?" Very dramatic. Her face hardened. "Don't be sarcastic with me right now." "Oh, I'm sorry. Should I be crying instead? Begging you to stay?" I got out of bed and walked to the window, pulling the blinds aside to look out at our quiet suburban street. "Because that's not happening." She slammed another drawer shut with unnecessary force. "This is exactly why I'm leaving. You never take anything seriously. You think everything's a joke. What I think is that adults usually have conversations before they start packing bags at 3 o'clock in the morning." I turned back to her, leaning against the window frame. "But hey, what do I know about being an adult?" "You wouldn't understand," she snapped, zipping up the first suitcase with violent efficiency. "You've never understood what I need." "Enlighten me, then. What exactly do you need that requires you to sneak out like a thief in?" The night she straightened up, and I saw something in her posture shift. This was it, the moment she'd been building up to. "I need space. I need time to figure out who I am without you constantly hovering over me, making decisions for both of us." Hovering. I actually laughed at that. "Is that what we're calling it when I ask where you've been until 2 o'clock in the morning? Or when I wonder why our joint savings account keeps shrinking? See, this is what I'm talking about. You're controlling. You question everything I do. I question things that don't add up. There's a difference." She grabbed her jewelry box from the dresser, dumping its contents into a smaller bag. "I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this." "Like what, exactly? In a house you don't pay rent for? With groceries you don't buy? Using a car you don't make payments on?" I kept my voice level, almost conversational. "Yeah, I can see how that would be suffocating." Her hand stilled on the zipper of the jewelry bag. "It's not about money. It never is until it is." She whirled around, her eyes flashing with anger. "You know what? I don't have to explain myself to you. This is my life, and I'll leave when I want to." The words hung in the air between us, final and absolute. She'd thrown down the gauntlet, expecting me to fight back, to argue, to beg. Instead, I walked to the nightstand, opened the drawer, and pulled out the spare key to her car. Then I went to the hook by the bedroom door where she kept her main set. "You're absolutely right," I said, walking back to her with both sets of keys. "It is your life." I held them out to her. She stared at the keys like they were a snake that might bite her. "Take them," I said simply. "What? The keys? You said it's your life, and you'll leave when you want to. So leave. But you'll need these." She looked from the keys to my face, clearly expecting some kind of trick, some last-minute emotional manipulation. When she realized I was completely serious, confusion replaced the anger in her expression. "You're just giving them to me? What did you expect? That I'd wrestle them away from you? Chain you to the radiator?" I shook the keys slightly. "You want to go? Go. But let's be clear about something. When you walk out that door with those keys, you're making a choice, and choices have consequences." She snatched the keys from my hand, but the victory she'd expected wasn't there. Instead, she looked almost deflated. "Fine," she said, but her voice lacked the conviction it had moments before. "Fine," I agreed, sitting back down on the edge of the bed. "Drive safe." That seemed to snap her back to her original fury. "That's it? That's all you have to say? What else would you like me to say? Have a nice life? Don't be a stranger?" I shrugged. "You've made your position pretty clear." She stood there for a long moment, suitcases at her feet, keys clutched in her hand, looking like she was waiting for me to crack, to show some emotion, anything that would give her the dramatic exit she'd been planning. But I just sat there, calm as a lake on a windless day. Finally, she grabbed the handles of both suitcases. "You're going to regret this," she said, heading toward the bedroom door. "Maybe," I replied. "But probably not." She paused in the doorway, looking back one more time. I could see she was waiting for me to call her name, to ask her to stay, to give her the power she'd always wielded in our relationship. Instead, I reached over and turned off the lamp on my nightstand. "Turn off the porch light when you leave," I said to the darkness. "And make sure you lock the front door behind you." I heard her sharp intake of breath, then the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the hardwood floor, getting fainter as she moved through the house. A few minutes later, I heard her car start in the driveway, then the sound of gravel crunching as she pulled out onto the street. The house fell silent again, but this time, the silence felt different. It felt like possibility. I didn't go back to sleep. There was no point. Instead, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the sun come up through the window she'd always complained was positioned wrong. Funny how quiet the house felt without her constant commentary about everything that was supposedly broken or inadequate. By 7 o'clock in the morning, I was already making calls. "First to the bank, I need to remove someone from my joint checking and savings accounts," I told the representative. "My spouse has decided to pursue other living arrangements." The process was surprisingly simple, since I was the primary account holder and she'd contributed exactly nothing to either account in the past 2 years. It took less than 20 minutes. Her debit card would be declined by noon. Next call was to my insurance agent. Health, auto, life, everything. Amazing how much money you save when you're only covering one person instead of two. The third call was the most important one. My buddy from college worked in property management downtown. We'd stayed in touch over the years, mostly through occasional beers and holiday cards. "Hey, it's me. You still have that nice one-bedroom available in the Riverside complex? The one with the view?" "Yeah." "Why? You looking to invest in rental property?" "Something like that." "How soon could someone move in?" Within an hour, I had the details, furnished, utilities included, 6-month lease, perfect. For someone who needed a place to stay while they figured out their next move. I put down the deposit and first month's rent. Then I did something that felt better than any therapy session ever could. I changed the locks. The hardware store opened at 8, and by 10 o'clock in the morning I was installing new deadbolts on every exterior door. The old keys she had would now be as useful as bottle caps. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "My card isn't working." "What did you do?" I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, "Nothing." "You said it was your life. Figure it out." She tried calling twice after that. I let it go to voicemail. Both messages were variations of the same theme, demanding to know why I was being petty and vindictive. The third call, I answered. "What?" I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You can't just cut off my access to money. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. That was my money in my account. You contributed $0 to it." "You want money? Get a job. This is our joint account." Was. Past tense. And before you start screaming about your rights, you might want to remember that you abandoned the marriage. Legal term for it is desertion. Look it up. The silence on the other end told me she was processing this information and didn't like what she was learning. "You're being ridiculous," she finally said. "I'm being practical. You made your choice. I'm making mine. We need to talk about this like adults. Adults don't pack bags and sneak out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Adults don't declare their independence and then expect their ex to subsidize their new lifestyle." I never said this was permanent, and there it was. The truth she hadn't wanted to admit, even to herself. This was supposed to be a power play, a manipulation tactic. She was supposed to leave, I was supposed to panic, and then she was supposed to come back. To a grateful, submissive husband who'd learned his lesson about questioning her. "Well," I said, "that's unfortunate because I'm treating it like it is." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next few days fell into a surprisingly pleasant rhythm. I came home to a quiet house. No complaints about dinner, no demands to watch her reality. TV shows, no questions about where I'd been or why I was 5 minutes late. The newspaper stayed where I left it. The remote control remained on the coffee table. The thermostat stayed at the temperature I preferred. But I wasn't just enjoying the peace. I was preparing on Thursday, exactly 4 days after she left. I called my neighbor from across the street. She was a kindergarten teacher, recently divorced, with a smile that could light up a room and a work ethic that put most people to shame. We talked over the fence a few times, mostly about her garden and my attempts to fix the sprinkler system. "Hey, this might sound strange," I said when she answered, "but my wife and I are separated, and I have a situation. My house is too big for just me, and you mentioned your lease is up next month. Would you be interested in renting a room? It would help us both out financially. There was a pause. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, what if she comes back? She made her choice. I'm making mine. The room has its own bathroom, and you'd have complete privacy. Plus, you'd be helping me keep this place from feeling like a mausoleum. She agreed to come look at the house that evening. When she did, her reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. This is beautiful, she said, running her hand along the kitchen counter that my ex had always complained was the wrong color. And you're sure you're okay with having a housemate? More than okay. Someone who appreciates what they have, instead of constantly finding fault? That sounds perfect to me. She moved in on Saturday. By Sunday afternoon, she'd already improved the place in ways my ex never had. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table, the scent of homemade bread filling the house, and conversation that didn't revolve around what was wrong with everything. But the best part was how she treated the space, like it was precious, like she was grateful to be there. Like she understood that a home was something you built together, not something you just consumed. On Sunday night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she looked over at me and said, "Thank you for giving me a chance. I know this arrangement might seem unusual to some people, but it feels right to me. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that seem unusual to other people," I replied. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, buzzed with another text from my ex. "We need to talk. I'm coming by tomorrow." I showed the message to my new housemate. "Looks like we're about to find out how unusual people think this really is." She smiled, and I realized something had shifted in the house. It felt like a home again, a real one, the kind where people actually wanted to be there. Monday morning brought a transformation I hadn't expected. I woke up to the smell of actual breakfast being cooked, not just coffee and whatever leftovers I could find in the fridge. My new housemate was in the kitchen, making scrambled eggs and toast, humming something soft under her breath. "Morning," she said, glancing up with a smile. "I hope you don't mind. I'm used to cooking for myself anyway, and it seemed silly to make just one serving." "Mind? This is the first real breakfast I've had in this house in about 3 years." She handed me a plate and poured fresh coffee into a mug I'd forgotten I owned. "Your ex wasn't much of a cook?" My ex wasn't much of a lot of things, apparently. We ate in comfortable silence, something I'd also forgotten was possible. No complaints about the temperature of the food. No demands to change the news channel. No lectures about my eating habits. Just two adults sharing a meal and starting their day. After she left for work, I took a walk through the house, really seeing it for the first time in months. The living room, which had always felt cluttered and chaotic, now looked organized and welcoming. She'd rearranged a few things, not dramatically, but enough to make the space feel intentional instead of haphazard. The bathroom she was using sparkled, not just clean but actually sparkling, with fresh towels folded neatly and toiletries arranged in a way that made sense. Even the mirror was streak-free, something my ex had never managed despite my repeated purchases of different cleaning products. But it was the small touches that really got to me. A book on the coffee table, open to a bookmark instead of thrown face down with the pages bent. Shoes, lined up neatly by the door instead of scattered wherever they'd been kicked. Off, the dishwasher actually run and emptied, not just loaded and left. Around noon, my phone started buzzing. My ex, right on schedule. "Where are you?" she demanded when I answered. "At work, where adults generally are on Monday afternoons." I went by the house. "There's a different car in the driveway. Congratulations on your observational skills." "Whose car is it?" "Mine to worry about, not yours anymore. Remember?" I could hear her breathing getting faster, the way it always did when she realized she wasn't controlling the conversation. "I'm coming over tonight. We need to talk." "No, we don't." "And no, you're not. That's my house too. Was. Past tense again. You left, remember? Dramatically, at 3 o'clock in the morning, with your declaration about it being your life. I never said I wasn't coming back. You never said you were either. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you thought. What matters is what you did. And what you did was abandon your marriage and your home. You can't keep me out of my own house. It's not your house anymore. Check the locks if you don't believe me. The silence that followed was the sound of reality hitting her like a freight train. You changed the locks, among other things? Yes. That's illegal. No, it's not. It's my house, on my mortgage, that I pay for with my income. You're not on the deed, you're not on the mortgage, and you don't contribute to the payments. Legally speaking, you were a guest and guests can be asked to leave. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing something for me. There's a difference. I hung up and turned off my phone again. The rest of the day passed peacefully. When I got home, my housemate was in the garden, actually working on the flower beds that had been neglected for the past year. I hope you don't mind, she said, standing up and brushing dirt off her knees. But those roses looked like they needed some attention. They did. I kept meaning to get to them, but you had other priorities. I get it. I find gardening relaxing anyway. We had dinner together that night, sitting at the kitchen table like civilized people, discussing our days without drama or complaint. She told me about her students. I told her about a project at work. Normal conversation between two adults who actually listened to each other. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, headlights swept across the living room window. My ex had arrived. Should I go to my room? My housemate asked, recognizing the tension that had suddenly filled the air. No, this is your home now. You have as much right to be here as anyone. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by aggressive knocking, then the sound of keys rattling uselessly in the lock. Open this door, my ex shouted from the porch. I walked to the front door but didn't open it. What do you want? I want to come in and talk. We can talk through the door. What do you want? Let me in right now. That's not going to happen. Fine, I'll call the police. Go ahead. Tell them your ex-husband won't let you into his house that you don't live in, don't pay for, and have no legal claim to. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic. Through the window, I could see her pacing on the porch, phone pressed to her ear. 5 minutes later, she was back at the door. The police said it's a civil matter, and they can't force you to let me in. Imagine that. This is insane. I live here. Lived. Past tense. You made your choice when you packed those bags. I want my things, my furniture, my wedding dress, my grandmother's china. I had to laugh at that. Your grandmother's china? The set we got from Target for our first apartment? That grandmother's china? You know what I mean? I know you're making things up as you go along. The furniture was bought with my money. The wedding dress is in a box in the garage, and the china is from Target. None of it belongs exclusively to you. You're being unreasonable. I'm being practical. If there are specific items you can prove you brought into the marriage, we can arrange a time for you to collect them. But you don't get to waltz back in here and pick through everything like you're shopping. I have rights. You have the right to the consequences of your choices. That's about it. She stayed on the porch for another 20 minutes, alternating between pleading and threatening, but I didn't open the door. Finally, I heard her car start and pull away. My housemate looked at me with something that might have been admiration. That was impressive. That was necessary. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. She can't just blow up her life and expect everyone else to clean up the mess. What happens now? I looked around the living room at the flowers she'd brought in from the garden, at the books she'd been reading, at the general sense of peace that had settled over the house. Now we live our lives, better ones than we had before. The texts started coming the next morning, not the angry, demanding ones from before, but something different, softer, more calculated. I miss our morning conversations. Then another one an hour later. Remember when we used to watch Netflix together on Sunday afternoons? By noon, she'd sent 5 more messages, each one a carefully crafted attempt to trigger some kind of nostalgic response. I read them all and deleted every one without responding. My housemate noticed me checking my phone more frequently at dinner. Everything okay? Just my ex trying a different approach. The aggressive tactics didn't work, so now she's trying emotional manipulation. Are you going to respond? Why would I? She's not saying anything that requires an answer. Wednesday brought phone calls. The first one came while I was at work. I've been thinking about us, she said when I answered, her voice artificially sweet. About all the good times we had. Did we? I'm having trouble remembering any recent good times. Don't be like that. You know we had happy moments. Sure. Early in the marriage, before I realized you thought happiness was something. That just happened to you instead of something you helped create. I'm trying to be nice here. No, you're trying to be manipulative. There's a difference. I made a mistake leaving like that. I was emotional, not thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to empty your dresser, pack 2 suitcases, and declare your independence. That takes planning. Can't we just talk face to face? We tried that. You spent 8 years talking. I spent 8 years listening. Now I'm done with both. I hung up before she could respond. The second call came during my lunch break. I went by Mom's house yesterday, she said, skipping any greeting. She asked where you were. I didn't know what to tell her. Try the truth. Tell her you left your husband at 3 o'clock in the morning because you decided your life was more important than your marriage. She wouldn't understand that. Then maybe you should ask yourself why. She always liked you better anyway. Your mother liked that I treated her daughter well, contributed to the household, and didn't disappear for hours without explanation. Shocking. I know you're being mean. I'm being honest. You're the one who's being mean, trying to use your mother's feelings to manipulate me into feeling guilty. I'm not manipulating anyone, right? Just like the sudden nostalgic texts about Netflix and morning conversations weren't manipulation either. She was quiet for a moment, probably realizing I'd been paying more attention to her tactics than she'd expected. I just want things to go back to how they were, she said finally. They can't, and honestly, they shouldn't. How they were wasn't working, at least not for me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've discovered what it's like to come home to someone who's actually happy to see me, someone who contributes instead of just consuming, someone who says thank you instead of demanding more, someone who appreciates what she has. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought she might have hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all its artificial sweetness. There's another woman. There's another person living here, yes. Someone who actually wants to be here. How long? How long what? How long have you been seeing her? I met her the day after you left. She needed a place to stay. I needed help with the house. Adults call that a mutually beneficial arrangement. You replaced me in 4 days. I didn't replace you. I upgraded my living situation. You made space available. Someone better filled it. The phone went dead. She'd hung up on me this time. Thursday's approach was different again. She showed up at my office. Sir, my assistant knocked on my office door. There's a woman here who says she's your wife. She's asking to see you. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. She says she'll wait. Then tell her she'll be waiting a long time. Security can escort her out if she becomes disruptive. She lasted about an hour in the lobby before giving up, but the fact that she'd driven to my workplace, walked into the building, and tried to force a confrontation told me she was getting desperate. Good. Friday brought the return of the angry texts, but with a new flavor. Threats. I talked to a lawyer. You can't just kick me out of my own home. I forwarded the message to my own attorney with a note. Please advise her lawyer. That abandonment is grounds for forfeiture of marital property claims. An hour later, my lawyer says you're full of it. Your lawyer is welcome to review the documentation I have of your voluntary departure, your refusal to contribute financially to the household, and your stated intention to live independently. Should be educational for both of you. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. That evening, my housemate and I were putting together a bookshelf for her room when she asked the question I'd been expecting. Is this going to cause problems for you? Me being here when your ex is clearly trying to come back? I stopped what I was doing and looked at her directly. Let me ask you something. Are you happy here? Very happy. Do you feel safe here? Completely. Do you feel like you can be yourself here? More than I have anywhere else? Then there's your answer. You belong here. She chose to leave, and I chose to move forward. Her regrets don't get to dictate my future. What if she keeps escalating? Then she'll learn that escalation works both ways, but I don't think she will. People like her are bullies, and bullies back down when someone stands up to them consistently. You sound pretty confident about that. I spent 8 years learning how she operates. The angry threats, the emotional manipulation, the attempts to make me feel guilty. It's all just different versions of the same strategy. She's trying to establish control, and you're not giving her any. Not an inch. Because the moment you give someone like that an inch, they take a mile and then demand to know why you're not giving them 2 miles. Saturday was blissfully quiet. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. My housemate and I spent the day working in the garden and organizing the garage. Normal. Weekend activities that felt revolutionary after years of walking on eggshells. Sunday afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching neighbors walk their dogs, she said, "You know, I was terrified of this arrangement at first. Moving in with someone I barely knew, especially someone going through a separation. What changed your mind?" "You did. The way you handle everything. You don't create drama, you solve problems. You don't make demands, you make decisions. It's refreshing." That's called being an adult. It shouldn't be refreshing. It should be normal. Should be, yes. But it's not. Trust me on that. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with one final message from my ex. "I'm not giving up on us." I typed back a single word. Good. Then I blocked her number. Some conversations are only over when you make them over. It was exactly 1 week after her dramatic midnight exit when I heard the key rattling in the front door lock, 7 days to the hour. I was in the kitchen making breakfast while my housemate was getting ready for work upstairs. The rattling stopped, followed by aggressive knocking, then the doorbell, then more knocking, this time with her fist. "I know you're in there," she called through the door. "Open up." I took a sip of my coffee and continued scrambling eggs. The knocking became more frantic. "Your week is up," she announced, as if we'd made some kind of appointment. "I'm ready to come home now." Home. The audacity was almost impressive. My housemaid appeared in the kitchen, dressed for work but clearly concerned about the commotion outside. "Should I leave through the back door?" she whispered. "Absolutely not. This is your home. You don't sneak out of your own home because someone else is throwing a tantrum on the porch." The knocking continued, accompanied now by increasingly desperate shouting. "I can see the lights on. I can smell breakfast cooking. Let me in right now." I walked to the front door, still holding my coffee mug. "What do you want?" "I want to come in. This is my house." "No, it's not. Stop being ridiculous. I live here. You left here. There's a difference. That was just temporary. I told you I needed space, and you got it. Permanent space. You're welcome. Open this door." "Why would I do that?" "Because we need to talk about our future." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Our future? You mean the future you abandoned when you declared your independence and stormed out with your suitcases?" I was angry. People say things when they're angry. People also do things when they're angry, like pack bags, demand keys, and leave their marriages. Actions have consequences. You can't just lock me out forever. Watch me. The silence that followed was different from her usual dramatic pauses. This was the silence of someone realizing their script wasn't working. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll go around back. The back door has new locks, too, so do the windows. And before you ask, yes, that's legal. This is insane. This is practical. You wanted your independence. You got it. All of it." I heard her walking around the side of the house, probably testing windows. My housemate, who'd been listening to this exchange with wide eyes, shook her head. She really thought she could just come back. She thought this was all a bluff, that I'd be sitting here miserable and desperate, counting the days until she graced me with her return. But instead, I moved on with my life. Shocking concept, apparently. The side gate rattled, followed by more frustrated cursing, then footsteps returning to the front porch. "I can see there's someone else in there," she shouted through the door. I saw her shadow in the kitchen window. "Congratulations on your detective work." "Who is she?" "Someone who appreciates having a home instead of just occupying space in one." "You're cheating on me." "You can't cheat on someone who left you. That's not how marriage works." "We're still married." "Technically, yes, but marriages require two people who want to be married to each other. You made it pretty clear you didn't want to be married to me." "That's not what I said. That's exactly what your actions said. Your words said it was your life, and you'd leave when you wanted. Your actions said I wasn't worth talking to before making major life decisions. Your behavior said this marriage wasn't important enough to fight for." The porch went quiet again. When she spoke next, her voice had changed, smaller, less certain. "I made a mistake. Yes, you did. Several of them. Can't we work this out?" "There's nothing to work out. You made your choice. I made mine." "What choice did you make?" "To be happy. To live with someone who wants to be here. To stop walking on eggshells and start walking on solid ground with her. With anyone who treats this place like a home instead of a hotel." I heard her sit down on the porch steps, a sound I recognized from years of her dramatic sulking sessions. "This isn't fair," she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. Fair would have been having a conversation before you packed your bags. Fair would have been treating your marriage like it mattered. Fair would have been considering how your choices affected someone other than yourself. I was unhappy. So was I. The difference is, I tried to fix it. You tried to escape it. I thought you'd come after me. And there it was. The truth she'd been dancing around all week. This had been a test, a manipulation, a power play designed to make me chase after her and prove how much I needed her. Why would I come after someone who clearly didn't want to be with me? Because that's what people do when they love someone. No, that's what people do when they're desperate and codependent. People who actually love someone respect their choices, even when those choices hurt. "So, you don't love me anymore?" The question hung in the air like smoke. A week ago it might have been harder to answer, but sitting in my peaceful kitchen with someone upstairs who actually wanted to be there, the answer was surprisingly clear. "I love who I thought you were. I don't love who you actually are." The silence that followed was absolute. No crying, no pleading, no angry outbursts. Just silence. Finally, I heard her stand up from the steps. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You're just the last one to know it." Her footsteps crossed the porch, then stopped at what must have been her car, but instead of leaving, I heard her walking back to the door. "I want my things." "Which things?" "All of them." You took what you wanted when you left, the rest stays here. That's theft, that's abandonment law. Look it up. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Tell them you want them to force your ex-husband to give you stuff you left behind when you voluntarily abandoned your marriage. I'm sure that'll go well. This time, when I heard her car door slam, she actually left. But something told me this was just the beginning. People like her don't give up when their first plan fails. They just make worse plans. My housemate came back downstairs, car keys in hand, ready to leave for work. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm perfect. She's the one with problems now." What happens next? I looked around the kitchen at the fresh flowers on the table, at the organized space that actually felt like a home, at the evidence of a life that was working, instead of just existing. Next, we see how far she's willing to escalate before she accepts reality. And if she escalates too far, then she'll learn that I can escalate too. But I'll be better at it. The escalation came faster than I expected. Tuesday evening, she was back with reinforcements. Her sister and her mother. The whole cavalry lined up on my porch like they were staging an intervention. "We need to talk," her mother announced through the door. "No, we don't. She's my daughter. And she's hurting. She hurt herself. I didn't do anything to her except refuse to chase after her when she left." Her sister joined in. "You're being cruel." She made one mistake. One mistake? She packed bags, declared her independence, demanded keys, and walked out on her marriage at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not one mistake. That's a series of deliberate choices. "People can change," her mother pleaded. "People can. She won't." Through the window, I could see my ex standing behind her family, letting them fight her battles for her. Typical. "What do you want from her?" her sister asked. "Nothing, that's the point. I want nothing from her because I expect nothing from her. She's proven what she's capable of, and it's not enough. You can't just throw away 8 years. I didn't throw them away. She did when she decided those 8 years weren't worth a conversation before she left." My housemate appeared beside me, dressed in one of my old college shirts and looking completely comfortable in her own home. "Is everything okay?" she asked, loud enough for the porch committee to hear. "Everything's fine, just some people who don't understand boundaries." The reaction from the porch was immediate, whispered conversations, shocked, gasps, and then my ex pushing past her mother to get closer to the door. "How dare you?" she screamed. "How dare you replace me?" "I didn't replace you. I found someone better. We're still married, legally, yes. In every way that matters. No, this is adultery. This is moving on. You should try it." Her mother stepped forward again. "Please, just let us in, so we can all sit down and work this out like adults. Adults don't bring their mothers to fight their battles. Adults don't abandon their marriages and then expect to waltz back in when it's convenient. Adults don't manipulate and threaten and demand." "What do you want us to do?" her sister asked. "I want you to take your daughter and sister back to wherever she's been. Staying and help her understand that actions have consequences. That's what adults do. And if she doesn't accept that, then she'll learn that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt." My ex pushed forward again. "You think you've won something? You think this new woman is going to stay when she sees what you're really like?" I looked at my housemate, who smiled and took my hand. "Want to answer that one?" She stepped closer to the door. "I've seen exactly what he's like. He's honest, reliable, and treats people with respect until they prove they don't deserve it. He's everything you clearly couldn't appreciate." The silence on the porch was deafening. When my ex finally spoke, her voice was pure venom. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I replied calmly. "It's been over since you packed those bags. You just refuse to accept it. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is wasting 8 years trying to make someone happy who was determined to be miserable." They left after that, all of them. But this time I knew they wouldn't be back. Something had shifted in that final exchange. The reality of her situation had finally penetrated her delusions. Later that evening, as my housemate and I sat on the couch watching a movie she'd actually chosen instead of endured, she asked, "Do you think she finally gets it now? I think she finally understands that I'm not the same person who would have begged her to stay 3 weeks ago." "What changed you?" "You did. This did." I gestured around the peaceful living room. I forgot what it felt like to be appreciated instead of tolerated. I forgot what it felt like to come home to someone who was actually happy to see me. And now I remember why I deserve better than someone who treats love like a weapon. She curled up against my side and I realized something that should have been obvious. From the beginning, the right person doesn't make you fight for their attention. They don't make you prove your worth. They don't leave you guessing where you stand. The right person just fits into your life and makes it better by being there. My phone buzzed with one final text from my ex. I hope you're happy. For the first time in years, I actually was. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.